Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso@thewatchbox.com, your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform whatsoever. Reach out to me for pricing at tmosso@thewatchbox.com. In 2004, Jaeger-LeCoultre and Aston Martin launched their first collaborative timepiece, the AMVOX wrist alarm. A combination of Aston Martin and Memovox, it combined the long-running JLC wrist alarm series with some of the imagery as well as the nomenclature and symbology of Aston Martin high-performance cars. Now, while many car watch co-brandings are a shotgun marriage, this one was organic, as Jaeger instruments had appeared inside of Aston Martin cars dating back to the 1920s, and they continued to appear there right up through the 1990s. So it was actually Jaeger that appeared inside Aston Martin before Aston Martin appeared on Jaeger. Also remarkable was the fact that the AMVOX line was created uniquely. So these weren't variations on existing watches with Aston Martin wings. This was an all-new model line of bespoke models, and what we have here is the first of that series. 42 millimeters in stainless steel, the AMVOX, subsequently known as the AMVOX1, channeled the style of the 1968 Polaris diving alarm, the E859 Polaris diver. And we're going to talk about that once we get through the dimensions. So 42 in diameter, 15 millimeters thick. The lug-to-lug dimension is 47 millimeters, and if you include the end links of the bracelet, the total distance across the wrist is a fairly beefy 53.5 millimeters. And the watch has a 22 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Now, the thing about the Polaris elements of this watch, from the shape of the case and lugs, to the loft of the crystal, to the triple crown layout, to the wrist alarm complication, this was created 4 full years before the tribute to Polaris launched in 2008. So the AMVOX was originally launched with the idea that it would be effectively a modern vehicle for those historic Polaris styling cues. And of course, it became one of several, but it was critically one of the first. Now, on the wrist, my wrist is 16 centimeters in circumference. You can see it's a large timepiece. It wears a lot smaller when it's on a strap. So on a strap, I'd say this watch probably wears on a wrist as small as 14 centimeters circumference. On the bracelet, I think you're going to need a wrist of at least 15 centimeters circumference. And again, my wrist is 16. Here's the cuff shot. Here's the down the barrel shot, and over the top. Now, the bracelet is an impressive piece. Descended from the original late 1990s Reverso Grand Sport bracelets, it's a redoubtable piece. It has a little bit of a taper as it moves down from the end link. The end link is integrated into the case. Most of these, again, were on straps, so it's an unusual and deluxe accessorization of the watch. You could see that the flanking links are polished, the center links are striated and satinated, but what's really fascinating is the way the bracelet's put together. At first glance, you might be disappointed, thinking, pin sleeves, really, on a watch of this price from a brand like Jaeger-LeCoultre? But upon closer inspection, you'll find that they're actually all spring bars, meaning you can use your strap tool to size the bracelet. Each link pops out with a quick depression of the spring-loaded bar, allowing you to size every single link in the bracelet, because each one is removable by spring bar. Also, the watch includes an approximately 2.5 millimeter incremental tool-free adjustment on each side of the clasp. So if you're familiar with the Rolex Easy Link, that's exactly what we have right here. But instead of one big 5 millimeter link like on a Rolex, here we have two 2.5s. So each side has a micro adjustment built in. The clasp is remarkably deluxe. It is a twin trigger clasp times 2. So twin triggers on each side, double deployant. You have 4 spring-loaded triggers, and the springs are actually stored in little blocks in the center. So this is a very secure bracelet when closed up and very easy to size. The case is simple but strong. As with the original Polaris, we have angular integrated lugs that are slightly beveled on their side and then very squared off on their ends. Everything's of high polish. You can see the bezel is barely there as the bezel thins out considerably. And the watch face is dominated by a huge cambered box section sapphire that's designed to evoke the plexiglass of the original 1965 to 1970 Polaris diving alarm. It would have included a huge plexiglass to achieve its depth rating. Well, this watch is water resistant down to 50 meters. So effectively splash and rain only, but it still keeps the imagery of that original Polaris, which includes the use of the somewhat controversial Calypso hands that JLC claims was featured on some of the Polarises. We also have the same font used for the numerals. Then we have the triple crown design. One interesting distinction. On the back of these, you could see that we actually have 14 perforations for the caseback resonator, whereas on the original Polaris, there would have been 16. On the original Polaris, there would have been a quadrille or quartered cross-hatching on the crowns. Here we have 3 JL logos. The center crown operates an internal bidirectional rotating timing bezel, so you can actually line up that index with the minute hand or the hour hand, depending on what you want to time. And it's very handy, actually. I find the combination of the alarm and the rotating bezel is all you're going to need for almost any occasion. Who needs a chronograph? I'll also mention the watch is fairly well loomed. Do a quick loom shot here. You can see that the numerals, the indices, and the hands are luminescent. And a fascinating distinction from other Memovox models, you actually wind up with a little mobile index for setting the alarm. You can see how I'm able to set the system even in the dark. It'll sound for over 20 seconds when fully wound. But it has a wonderful tone and a lyrical sort of ring and jingle to it that you don't get on historic Memovox models. This one has a hanging gong. Rather than using a striker against the case flank as an older Memovox, this one actually has a dedicated chiming element. Now, underneath that case back, which is blazoned with Aston Martin's famous wings logo, we have a JLC manufactured caliber 918. The 918 was the successor to 1969's 916. 918 was a little bit more modern in architecture, but fundamentally they are the same by tech and spec, meaning this 918 is almost identical to the caliber 916 you would have found in the original 1970s era JLC alarms. So this watch with caliber 918 is an automatic winder with bidirectional winding action. It has a 45-hour power reserve. As you could see, little crown at the bottom is what actuates the time. It does have a hacking seconds function. It pivots on 22 joules. It beats away at 28,800 vibrations per hour. Its predecessor, caliber 916, was the first high-beat JLC Memovox movement, so that's what's meant by high beat, 4 hertz or 8 beats per second. There's a lot to love with this watch, and I should clarify too, though, it's a special edition. The steel version of the AMVOX was not a limited series. There were others that were limited. This one was not. This was special rather than limited, and it is a very special watch. The movement, moreover, has been through the full Master 1000 hours control, a test of chronometry, shock resistance, winding efficiency, power reserve, and water resistance that is rendered on the entire watch, not just the bare movement as with the COSC. So this watch was thoroughly vetted with high-grade materials and regulation before it left JLC. Reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. And before I go, I should clarify one question people often have about these earlier Memovox movements, because we didn't get a quickset until caliber 856, which bowed on the tribute to Polaris. This has a semi-quickset, so you back the hour hand through 10 p.m. and midnight, back and forth, and it ratchets the date forward, and that's how that works. Again, reach out to Team Mosso at thewatchbox.com for pricing details.